Here in the house with you all again today. Thank you, Reverend Joan, for the invitation to allow me to be of service on this day. The song that they just sang was one of my favorite of Ricky's, Use Me, and it goes hand in hand with how may I be of service? How may I serve? How do we allow Spirit to use us for something greater than ourselves? So as I was listening to the lyrics, just show me how to use me. Show me how to use my hands. Show me how to use my heart. Show me how to serve in a way that's beyond anything that I could ever imagine. I had an opportunity to listen to your service on last Sunday, and one of the things that I noticed that Reverend Joan had mentioned was when she had asked, when you give yourself, you are of service by being present. Just your very presence is a gift. And then she said to ask yourself, or even say to yourself, that my presence is a gift. How many times do we think of ourselves as a gift, of our presence being a gift in the world? Just even in our own families, in our communities, how do we think of our presence as being a gift? When I wake up in the morning sometimes, and I don't do this often, and it's like when I was preparing for this talk, it helped me to remember what it was that I would do sometimes right before when I got up in the morning, before I went to work. And there was this saying that Reverend Martin Luther King, there's a quote that he has. And it says, Spirit, show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. And I would say that in the mornings before I started my day. And then I remember those days that I did not say it. I would go to work, and it seemed like chaos just just came loose. And what I started thinking about is like, okay, what is it that I did not say this morning? And it wasn't to beat myself up, but it was a reminder. How am I to be used in this day? Even when I didn't say the quote, but it's how may I be of service, even in the place of where I am. Many of you know that I lived here, I left here about 11 years ago, and I moved to Georgia, and I was in Texas for those 11 years. And during those times, even when I left from here to move to Georgia, Spirit had told me, and it's like, my time here is complete. And even to move to Georgia, it was, I'm going to Georgia? Really? Okay. But it served me in such a way that I could not even imagine. It opened up doors internally for me, because what I realized was that it took me away from my distractions that I had here at that time. And being out there, it was just myself, so no family. I knew a couple of people, but not a lot. But what I realized was that, one, I needed to be near the water. So I moved to Atlanta, and I stayed there for a while. Atlanta's a wonderful place. It just wasn't for me. I needed the water. I lived in California for 20-something years. I needed the water. So I looked at the map, and Savannah was the only place. But I also had to look at, where is there a spiritual community that I could serve, because I was a practitioner. There was only one center in that space, in Savannah. And so I reached out to the minister. Off I went. Little did I know what me saying yes to moving to Savannah, what that was going to entail. I just realized that I'm packing my bags, moving to Savannah. It'll be all good. And it was, in a way. I've had a lot of opportunities to express my spiritual self, to allow Spirit to guide me in places that I may not have thought that I would even go. When I went to the center that was there, speaking with the minister and just being of service in this community that he had, it allowed me to meet new people and to be able to be of service to those individuals that I had never met, but I met them during my time with the community. Little did I know also that I would start ministerial school. That was not in my immediate radar, because I can tell people, it's like, yeah, no, that was not in my calling, but it was in Spirit's calling for me to step into this role and to do this training. And it has been an amazing blessing for me to be able to say yes to stepping into ministry. And the thing about it is that even as a practitioner, we're stepping into ministry, even as we show up on a daily basis, on a weekly basis to be a part of this community, we're stepping into ministry. So it doesn't have to be the title of a minister to be in ministry, to be in service. Terry, when you're singing, it's like that's a ministry, that's service. You're giving that service of your gift, of people get to enjoy that. Nancy, when you're playing the piano, it's like people get to hear that and they experience what that feels like to them. Music is such, for me, is such a inviting space to be in. It's a healing space. And it allows me to, even when I'm doing my talk, the music, whatever the song is before the talk, sometimes shifts my talk because I listen in, I feel in, and it's, oh, this is what I'm to do. It allows me to be in that deep listening. That's being of service to Spirit within. We're called to give of our gifts and our talents, however that may be. We show up in service sometimes in a way that people just want us to listen to them. And sometimes we never know when that may happen. When I was in Georgia, I used to work in grocery stores. And one of my friends that's here, he would tell me that this job that I had, that was my ministry. I'm like, yeah, right, It's like, I'm in here in the stores, I'm doing what I need to do for the company, interacting with customers periodically. How is that my ministry? Until a couple of times I've had people, random people that I've never met, that have shown up in front of me. They're looking for a particular product, item. And although I don't work for the store, I'm in the store. And they're like, well, this is what I'm looking for. And then they proceed to tell me what's going on with them. They just were led to tell me, one person's having a colonoscopy and the other person, well, she was dealing with cancer. And I listened to her, and something guided me to, in that place, to ask her if she wanted prayer. I don't typically do that when I'm working, when I'm in the store. I don't know how many of you do that when you're shopping and, out doing your jobs. But what I know is that gave me an opportunity to be of service to that individual that I was speaking with, to those people that I was speaking with. And then I went back on to, I gave her a hug, and I went back on to what I was doing. But it stuck with me. That opportunity to be of service in that particular grocery store. And I had 25 grocery stores, so I'm in different stores all the time. And it still allowed me, even before I walked through the door, how may I be of service when I walk through those doors? To interact with the management here, the workers here. How may I serve? And there are times that I may have been in this funky space before I walked in the door, and it's like, let me take a deep breath before I walk into the store, because I know there's always issues at the store. Up until then, up until that moment when I asked, there had always been issues. Now it's, okay, Spirit, what are we doing? Help me here. Help me to understand why I'm here and what do I need to say. And I walked in, and the conversation totally went in a different direction, even before I opened my mouth, other than, hello, how are you? And maybe it was my energy because I was showing up to be of service, but also to get work done. But their energy shifted also. And in their shifting of that energy, there was a different communication that happened. It was a more livelier communication. But we also got to the point of, this is what my team needed to do, and this is how the store can support, vice versa. And so it became this way of being for me as I'm walking in the stores, wherever it is that I'm going. And it becomes this reminder, how do we serve? When we're doing our shopping, when we're wherever it is that we may go, with work, how do we serve? How do you show up and serve and be of service? Do you even think about that? That when you walk in, and sometimes we get up in the morning, and the first thing may not be, well, how might I serve today? The first thing may be, well, today I have to do this and this and this, and oh, wait a minute, I forgot to do this on yesterday, so this now comes on this to-do list. It's a get-to-do list. But somewhere in there, how do we show up and serve? How do we show up and be of service? We're bringing our gifts and talents to the work that we're doing. And what we know is that Spirit has put us in these places for reasons that we may not even understand or know. When I moved to Georgia with this company that I was working with, I worked with this company for 8 years. And for 8 years. And actually during that time, it allowed me the opportunity to be able to transfer from Georgia to Texas. I didn't know that, that was possible at the time, but because they have stores in those areas, I was able to, when I moved to Dallas, to be able to transfer to Dallas. And I stayed there for 2 years working, and then I moved to Houston. So they had stores in Houston. So I was able to be of service in those stores. I'm thinking, and mind you, after year one, I was ready to say, you know what, I don't want to work with this company anymore. God, I don't know why you have me here with this company. Can you help me out here? Help me to understand this. Little did I know of what that blessing was to allow me to be able to travel to those areas and then to come back to Georgia with a promotion. I wasn't planning for that either. I knew that it was time for me to leave. I was hoping to stay in Houston for another year, and that didn't work out. You know how when you pack up your stuff, it's like, unless you know that you have your place already laid out that, yes, I'm moving to this address. Well, you think that's the address that you're moving to, but then Spirit says, no, we're not moving across the city. And then you start packing. For me, I started packing up my stuff. It's like, oh yeah, because Spirit said, start packing. I'm packing. Okay, let's go. I'm packing up boxes, and I have all my boxes kind of stacked up on my walls. And I'm going looking at places, and every place I looked for in Houston fell through. Nothing worked out. And a place that I thought, it's like I took all the paperwork that I needed, and somebody beat me to the place. I'm like, okay, Spirit, why am I packing my stuff again? Where am I going? And then Spirit said, go look at your company website. Look at what jobs they have available. I'm like, okay. So I go to the location, and they have supervisor positions available. One of them is in the area that I started with in the company. Another area was in another part of Georgia. And I was like, well, I'll put in for this area here because I've never lived in, this was in Athens where University of Georgia is. I've never lived in Athens area, so this might be a good move for me. And the Spirit came back and said, yeah, you might want to apply for this one in Savannah also. Like, dang it, really? Like, okay. So, and I did. And so they called me a couple of days later to interview me. And in that process, they said, well, we have a really strong person that we have that can take the Athens area. So how about we interview you for the Savannah area? I was like, okay. And I paused for a moment. I was like, all right, Spirit, I'm listening. I'm listening. This is me being of service to listening to Spirit within me. And I ended up with the position in Savannah. In my mind, my hesitation was because I know this is one of the hardest areas to fill for our positions. But I'm like, all right, Spirit, I'm willing to do whatever it is. It's me being of service to Spirit within me. And I listened. And so I realized now me packing my boxes just to move across the city became now me repacking my boxes to move back across the state or the country. And I'm like, oh, now I need to get some more boxes and I need to repack these things, and now I need to get rid of some more stuff. So I started getting rid of stuff as quickly as I could because I told them I would be there the first week of October. This was the last 2 weeks of September. So I had all that time to get everything reorganized and then drive back to Georgia. And it all worked out. Me coming back to Georgia has allowed me that opportunity to trust that how I serve, that as I serve, that Spirit within me serves me as well. That as I serve the Spirit within me, that there are blessings that show up in ways that I could not have imagined. And although I stayed there for 4 years in that last role of supervisor, I knew it was time for me to move. I knew it was time for me to leave, and I was thinking, where am I moving to? And I kind of contemplated it. It's like, I was thinking, it's like, yeah, I don't think I'm going back to the Bay Area just yet. Because I started thinking, the cost of living out here is much different than Georgia's cost of living. And so much other things, but Spirit kept guiding me. I was like, I can go to North Carolina. I have friends in Charlotte, and I can go there. And I was like, no, that's not where you're going. And the opportunity came for me to move back home. Because what I realized was that I missed what family, what community felt like. But I also missed what being in these spiritual communities that I've been a part of, being of service, what I was missing with that. Because that, in that place of how I serve, it helps to feed me. It helps to support me in my continued spiritual growth. And although it's like when I was in Savannah, it's like I attended Unity churches most of the time. There was only one. But then also I had the opportunity to speak on Zoom at different spiritual communities. And so that started ramping up for me. But because I moved to Texas, I was guided to move to Texas, and I ended up going to a center in Austin because one of my friends said, I need you to house sit for me. We had been roommates when I was living in Dallas, so she moved to Austin and said, okay, I'll go. I've not been to Austin, let me go hang out. Well, wherever I travel to, I always look in the magazine, the Science of Mind magazine, to see what spiritual communities are around. And so I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, this might be good. Well, I don't know, we'll see. And then I got to the point that Sunday morning, I'm like, no, I'm not going to church, I'll just watch it online. And when Spirit is calling you, you kind of get that tap like, it's like, no, you need to go. I say, can't I just watch this online, please? No, you need to go in person. And so I started looking through their website again. So I came across a practitioner that I knew. She's actually back here in the Bay Area now. And so she was there on that Sunday. And so that was my intention, to go and speak to her and, catch up with her. But God had some other things in store for me, because when I arrived there and I was there for the talk, or not for the talk, but I was there for the service, there was one of the ministers, I had never met any of these ministers that were there, not in person. And we were having a conversation. She came up to my friend and I, and we were having a conversation. And I told her I was a practitioner, and I think I told her I was a minister then at the time. And so she said, well, We have an opening on September, I think it was the 23rd of that year. Are you available to speak? And I'm looking like, what? I'm like, you don't know me from Adam and Eve, but it's like, but you're asking me to speak. And then my friend that was with me, she said, it's a good platform for you to be able to serve. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, no, that's like, maybe next time. But Spirit was like, no, you do this now. I'm like, okay. So I said yes. And so everything was set up. That was 4 years ago. Every year, 2 to 3 times a year, actually 3 to 4 times a year, I speak at this community on Zoom. Had I have not gone to this community at that time, I may not have had that opportunity to connect with the ministers that are there. And I don't know, some of you may know the senior minister for this one, her name is Reverend Rainbow Johnson. And beautiful spirit, I love her dearly. And that has allowed me to connect with the other ministers that were there. Last year, the minister that actually invited me to speak at that center, she made her transition last year. And so I've not had the opportunity to see her again in person. Being of service for me has allowed me to be able to create communities in places when I just go visit places. When I went to, in 2014, when I went to hypnotherapy training, there was a center there, and I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so again, I went to go see what communities are there. So my thing was, I'm going to go to, because I'm going to be here for about 2.5 months. I'm going to check out all of these communities here and see which one resonates with me. I only went to one, because that was the one that resonated with me when I arrived. And during that time, it allowed me to be of service, because I came in and said, telling her, said, although I'm in class, how may I serve your community? So that place of being of service is not just with your communities here that you're with, but it's all over the world. Think about when you travel. It's like, how do you serve? When you're out of this country, how do you serve? This opportunity to be of service is such an amazing experience, and it's scary at times also, because you never know when you get that feeling that says, go serve here, go do this. And my go-to in my mind, and I kid about this most of the time, but when Spirit says, this is what I want you to do, I'm like, I'm not doing that. No, you got to find somebody else. But in my mind, I'm already saying, I will do this, because I never know how this may affect other people, because it's not just me being of service, but I'm providing my energy, my input into someone else's life. I was not planning on speaking of this one, but years ago, I had experienced a trauma in my life, and it devastated me for a while. But then what I realized was that when I moved to Georgia, that trauma allowed me to be able to be of service to others, because there was a community that I was able to go and volunteer with, to be able to be in support for people that had experienced the same trauma that I had experienced. And at one time, I did not even want to talk about what the trauma was, but realizing that there are so many people that have experienced this trauma that I've had, that I experienced then, that how may I show up, because I understand. I feel you. I may not have experienced the same trauma in the same way that you did, but what I know is trauma. How do I show up and support? How do I serve? And I would be on certain nights, we would have certain days of the week, we were on schedule to be on call. And so on call, I had to go to the hospital sometimes. And to be with this, with the person or however many people it may have happened to. And sometimes I would think, do I really want to give up my time? Like, I have this going on here, this going on, and how may I serve? Because me being of service outweighs what my other experience and what my other work thing that may be. And it's like, this is what I'm called to do. Just be on call. I may not get called up, but just being of service, having the phone available to say if someone calls. And there were several times in the middle of the night, I would get up and have to go to the hospital. And then after I came off duty with them, went home, took a shower, and went to work. But those experiences lasted for a long time with me. So much so that when I'm in communities like this, when I'm in prayer with individuals, how may I serve? Because in that place of when we're praying with individuals, we're praying for ourselves as well. I always tell people, it's like, I'm praying for me, but it's like, but you're just happen to be, you came with this matter before I could think of it, but this matter pertains to me. So I'm praying for me, I'm praying for us. It's allowing me to be in that place of being of service. How may I serve? How many times have you been called to be of service and you've said, nope, not going, and then you turn around and maybe a week later that same opportunity shows up again and you may say, okay, I'm going this time. It happens. And sometimes you may get an immediate, yes, I'll serve. For each individual that has anything to do with this service on today, there is this amazing opportunity that you serve. You serve on a weekly basis, and we think, okay, just because we see you on Sundays, that you're just being of service on Sunday. There's preparation that goes into all of this that still allows you to be of service. During the week, I'm sure that there are things that happen on Zoom. There are meetings that happen. You're being of service. In our lives, in our families, how may we serve? How may we serve those individuals in our family that may be distraught, that may be going through some issues? How do we serve them? If we choose to. Sometimes we may choose, you know what, that's your stuff. You got to go deal with that one on your own. I'll see you later. For me, it's like in the back of my mind, I may not want to interact with that person right then and there, but what I do is I'll do a prayer. I'll serve in a way of saying a prayer for their situation. That's what I'm called to serve. That's one way I'm called to serve. I've served my country for 26 years in the military. That was not my intention. I always tell people, it's like I joined the military because I needed to get away from my grandmother because she was just driving me crazy. My intention was to go in, just do 8 years, and be gone. 26 years later, and it took them telling me, well, if you stay on active duty one more year, you have to go to Afghanistan. Nope, here's my paperwork, not going. I've served my time. But in those I got called back up on active duty right after September 11th. But it wasn't until 2003 that I got called back up. 2006, me being on active duty was a blessing for me because what it allowed me to do was to be able to go back to D.C. to see my mom because she had gotten sick. So from February to September of 2006, I was on a plane from California going to D.C., leaving on a Thursday, coming back here first thing Monday morning, going to the base and jumping into my uniform and doing what I was called to do. In that process of seeing my mother from February to leave her house, I didn't see her leave, I got a phone call. From when she left her house in February, she had not been back to her house until September of that year. So I'm here traveling different places with my unit, but also finding time that I need to fly back to D.C. to take care of household stuff for her, to take care of health stuff, health-related issues for her. She had cancer. Her cancer metastasized. And during that time, I was flying back and forth to D.C. And in that process, I reached out for prayer, but I knew that me being of service to my family was important for me. It was my brother and I. We're the last two that's left. And in that moment, one of the trips that I was making there to D.C., I was on the plane. And I had not been taking care of myself, because sometimes when we go into service, we put it all on, we just give it all that we have. And sometimes we neglect ourselves in this place of being of service. In this process, we have to take care of ourselves as well. It matters. And what Spirit reminded me as I was on this plane, that if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be healthy enough to take care of anybody else. I'm like, oh. Because I had been neglecting my doctor's appointments that I had, or physical therapy appointments that I had. I'm like, well, I have work to do. I have to deal with my mom's stuff. So I neglected myself in this place of being of service. Service is taking care of self as well. And in that process, once I came back from D.C., I went back to my physical therapy, set up all my appointments, did what I needed to do, and still kept working, kept doing the flight to D.C. Come September, when I went to D.C. to go see her, and she was in the hospital, and they were releasing her. I said, okay, my brother is there. He can handle this. I need to get back to work. And so that next day, I'm talking to my mom, trying to, and I realized something was going on. And so I said, put my brother back on the phone. So I asked him, I said, what's going on? He said, she's just kind of looking out the window. I said, call the hospital. She has an infection. She needs to go back. She was only home from February to September one day. But out of that time, I was of service of getting the house in order, whatever needed to be done, taking care of her will, taking care of her paperwork, taking care of whatever needed to be done, being of service to my mother. October, she made her transition. And when she did, I was of service because I was there in the room with her to help usher her to the other side. I would say I had no intentions of knowing that, but I went to the chapel. I said, Spirit, you got to show me what to do. How am I to be of service to my mom? And I came back upstairs, and I have this book that I carry. It's called Your Needs Met. And in it has like different prayers and stuff that's in it. So whenever I need a message or something, I said, Spirit will tell me, go to this page. You ever open up a book and, Spirit guides you to say, read this page right here? That's what I was led to. And when I opened the book, it took me to the 23rd Psalm. And in the past, my relatives that have made their transition, that psalm always kept coming to me. Sometimes it would just come to me audibly. It's like 23rd Psalm, and I would just start reciting it. In this case, when that happened, I knew exactly how to be of service to my mother. And so I went to where she was, and I realized that she was done. She had given all that she could. So I called the doctors, and we celebrated her, the next day. But I realized that there was still another year that I had after she made her transition to take care of the house and what I wanted to do. Then it became, how do I serve my brother? Because he stayed in the house. But I'm like, yeah, no. You need to do something different for me, because I'm paying mortgage here and rent here, and that's not what I was called to do. But it was in that moment. But I realized, how am I being of service? And so I ended up selling the house, and even with my brother, because he had to find some place to move. I was thinking, you know how you want to be of service, like, oh yeah, you can come live with me, come move to Georgia with me, and Spirit was like, no, you're not doing that, I'm like, this is my brother. No, you're not doing that. And so I realized, okay, so then what do? You have to know the truth for him. You have to know the truth of who he is, knowing that all of his needs are taken care of. That was a hard place to be in, but it's worked out, because had I have jumped in to take care of him, to rescue him, then it would have been like, would he have been doing the things that he's doing now on his own? So this place of being of service, it has allowed me that opportunity to keep saying yes. Even when I moved back here to the Bay Area and the opportunity, I was sitting at my desk or on my computer, and Spirit said, send out a message to some of the centers around the area to see if they have openings for guest speakers. I'm like, oh. I'm like, well, I know a couple of people. I know some of the ministers in this area, and it's like, and I know people in different centers. Let me just try it out and see. So I did that, and I received a few that came back, which has created some opportunities for me to be of service. And I think I shared when I was here last time that when the opportunity came for me to speak here at Agape Bay Area, I had not sent out a message to Reverend Joan. I'm a part of Reverend D. Jacqueline's ministry, Platinum Butterfly, and Verona was one of the board members on there. So I've known Verona for a while. And it just so happens that she called me up one Thursday and said, would you be willing to speak at Agape Bay Area? And I was like, this is one of the centers that I had not put on my list, but I was coming here anyways because I wanted to do it in person with Reverend Joan. Spirit has something else in store for me to say, no, this is how you're going to serve on this day. So I said, yeah, sure. And it has been such a beautiful experience, to be able to be with you all. And those that are on YouTube and Facebook, welcome. I should have said that at the beginning. I apologize. But this is also for you all to say, think about how you can show up and be of service. How do you serve? How is it that Spirit is calling you to serve? Even when it feels scary as I don't know what. Say yes, because you never know what doors may open for you. I continue to keep being in this space of saying yes, and sometimes I'm a little hesitant about it because what I know on the other side is that I know Spirit is creating something grand for me, but then it's like, am I ready for that grandness that I know is coming? Do I want to serve in this capacity right now? I don't know. But what I know is that at the heart of who we are, who I am, that the answer is yes. Unless it feels like, no, this is not for me. But everything that has been dropped into my spirit has been for me. And sometimes I still may not have seen the end result of it because it's still in progress. But what I know is that this opportunity for us to serve in whatever capacity you're called, continue to serve in your music and the work that you do, continue to serve in your piano, continue to serve in all the works that you do as you're doing the audio, video streaming, whatever it is, YouTubers and live streamers that you're doing, that you're being called to serve to, say yes. Sit down and write out, listen to what Spirit is calling you to do, because we never know. We think in our minds, like, oh yeah, Spirit wants me to go over to, work with this company, and it's like, I'm going to go in and do this project for them. But there's something greater that comes out of that. When I was last here, I was with a company, and they hired me as a temp. And so my whole thing was, I'm coming in learning this sales position with this company. And I'm thinking, that's what I'm here to do, to learn this sales position. Spirit has something greater, because in this process, there was a person that was there that was making their transition, and they wanted to be able to put a video package together to wish him a happy birthday. Well, I'm a videographer, so I'm like, oh, I can do that. And I'm like, Spirit, is this why you had me come to this company? And so we set up a party in one of the rooms, and all the workers that were there, it's like everybody got together and we had a celebration. And I videotaped the whole event. I videotaped each person speaking their word to that person that was working with the company. And that was the fun part. The hard part is the editing, putting it all together to make it a perfect package. And so once I put the package together, edited everything, put it all together, we sent it out to him, and it arrived on his birthday. So he watched it with his family, and he was in tears. because that was my way of being of service. Little did I know that that was why I came to this company. About 2 weeks later, he made his transition. About 3 weeks later after that, the company let me go. I'm like, really? How are you firing me? It's, what? Okay. And you know how sometimes like when companies let you go, you get in that boo-hoo moment and it's like you start crying. I'm driving down the highway and I'm thinking, they let me go. Why they let me go? I was like, but what I realized was that this was right before I was about to move to Georgia. And my hesitation was I was not going to tell my manager that I was moving because this was in May. I wasn't leaving until August time frame. But Spirit says specifically when I was walking out the door, let them know today that you are leaving. But you're not leaving until later. I said, no, I don't want to tell them that because what if they let me go? It was very insistent. Let them know today. I said, okay, I'll tell them. And sure enough, that was on a Wednesday. By that Friday, they let me go. So as I'm driving down the freeway, I'm thinking, it's like, what am I going to do? It's like, now I got to go look for work. And then all of a sudden, something hit me and said, well, you know you can file for unemployment, right? I'm like, oh, yes, there is a blessing in this. Okay. But what I found out later was that the company needed to let 2 people go because whatever the profits, it wasn't working out financially. So they had to let 2 people go. And the manager didn't know what 2 people would be leaving. One other person, he had given his notice and he was going to Google. I was the second person on that day that walked in and told them that I'm leaving, but I'm not leaving. Said, I'll be here until, the end of July if you need me to. And evidently they were like, no, we need to let you go now. But it made that manager's decision a lot easier when I gave that notice. I'm like, oh, this is what you're up to. Now, mind you, here in California, it's like back then, it's like I applied for unemployment. That was in June. My unemployment didn't kick in until I was in Georgia. And so in the meantime, I'm thinking, I still need to pay rent. I still need to do this and, still travel across, over to Georgia. Spirit, how are we doing this? What are we doing? In this process of being of service, of saying yes, all of my needs were met and more. Even when I was looking for where am I going to stay, it all showed up. When I arrived in Georgia to be a part of spiritual communities, I met some amazing people in those communities. And we have friendships even to this day. So think about when you are called to be in the service. Don't look at it always as what's in it for me. But it's how am I opening my heart? How am I tapping into my heart? And how is Spirit using me for something greater than myself? So as I don't know how much time I have, as I start to bring this to a close, there is I love that the message that, the quote that we use for today, from Martin Luther King, when it says, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. And that's what being of service is. That place that we get to step into, allow Spirit to show us, to guide us, to direct us into something that's greater, that helps to serve Spirit within us. It helps us to grow. It helps us to expand our consciousness. For me, it's like it's helped me to be able to expand those individuals that I get to call family, that have been friends for years, but they feel like family. How do I serve? How do you serve? How is your presence, wherever you are, a gift to each person that you're with? So when you get up in the morning, when you're going to the store, when you're in your cars, ask the question, how may I serve today? And see what comes up. You might be surprised. It might be the same thing that's happened on yesterday. You serve in that same capacity. Or there's something different because something shifted. there may be a car on the side of the road that may have gotten a flat tire or something, or you may have been a witness to something. How may I serve? We don't know how it shows up, but be open to saying yes. Be open to, arms wide open, to step into that place of saying yes. I am here to be of service. So let us go into prayer.